Ever have one of those moments where time just folds in on itself? Mike was floating on a piece of metal that used to be part of the deck, somewhere in the dark water of the Gulf of Mexico. The air was thick with smoke. His ears were ringing so bad he could barely hear the waves. And the only thing that kept going through his head, over and over, was her voice. "Promise me this is the last one, Mike. I mean it this time." He had looked at her across that little kitchen table back in Louisiana, the one with the chip in the corner. She had that look, the one that said she was tired of being brave. And he said what he always said. "Just one more, baby.
One more and we're done."
I swear."
He meant it when he said it. He really did. But now he was out here, alone in the water. And she was somewhere on that rig. Or maybe she wasn't anymore.
And all he could think was that he broke the only promise that ever really mattered. Mike and Ellie weren't the kind of couple that posted every moment online. They were quiet about the things that mattered. They'd been together 3 years, engaged for 8 months. Both of them worked in the oil patch, not because they loved it, but because it paid better than anything else two people without college degrees could find down there. When they found out they could take the same hitch on the Deepwater Horizon, it felt like the universe was finally cutting them a break. One last big paycheck, enough to put a real down payment on a little house outside Lafayette. Enough to start trying for a baby. Enough to stop living like their whole life was just something they were renting until the next job. Ellie had never been on a deepwater rig before. Mike had. He told her it was just like any other job. Loud, dirty, long hours, except you couldn't go home at night. You were stuck out there with the same people for weeks. She laughed and said, "As long as I'm stuck with you, I'll be fine." When the helicopter dropped them on the helipad, Ellie went quiet for a second. The rig was enormous, lights everywhere. The ocean looked small from up there. Mike squeezed her hand once, quick, before anyone could see. "Home for the next 28 days, he said, trying to make it sound like a joke. She smiled, but he didn't reach her eyes. Those first few days were actually good. Better than good. They worked different shifts sometimes, but when they overlapped, they'd steal 10 minutes on the deck, leaning against the railing, watching the water turn colors at sunset. They'd talk about stupid things, what they were going to name the dog, whether they wanted a boy or a girl first, how her mom was going to lose her mind when they told her about the house. One night, Ellie looked at him and said, real soft, "You know, for the first time in a long time, I can actually see our life. Like, it's right there, just a little further down the road." Mike didn't say anything back. He just pulled her closer. He didn't want to jinx it. Around day 10, Mike started noticing things. He'd been around long enough to know when people were cutting corners. The cement job on the well had been rushed. Everyone knew it. The guys on the floor were talking about how they only used 6 centralizers instead of the 20-something they were supposed to. Something about saving time and money. Same old story. Mike mentioned it to one of the tool pushers, a guy he'd worked with before. "You don't like it, you can always go home," the guy said. Not mean, just tired. But we both know how that works. Mike didn't push it. He had Ellie on the rig now. He didn't want to make waves. Then came the negative pressure test. They'd been doing the final steps to temporarily abandon the well. The test was supposed to tell them if everything was sealed up properly down there, almost a mile below the ocean floor. But the readings were all over the place. Some guys said it was fine, just the bladder effect, whatever that meant. Others weren't so sure. Mike wasn't part of the decision. He was just a roughneck. But he heard the arguments. He saw the looks on people's faces. That evening, when he finally got a few minutes with Ellie, he was quieter than usual. "You okay?" she asked. He shrugged.
Just stuff. Work stuff. Nothing you need to worry about. She didn't believe him, but she didn't push. That was their deal. They tried to leave the rig on the rig.
Later that night, lying in his bunk, Mike couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about that test, about how many times he'd seen companies push things because stopping cost too much money.
About how nobody ever wanted to be the guy who said, "We're not ready." He told himself he was probably overthinking it. He told himself a lot of things. April 20th started like any other day.
Around 6 in the evening, they started displacing the heavy drilling mud with seawater. It was part of the process, lowering the pressure so they could finish the temporary plug. But it also meant that if something down in that well wasn't sealed right, whatever was down there was going to come up, fast. Mike was on the deck when the first weird things started happening. The pit levels were acting strange. The pressure was doing things it shouldn't. People were talking faster now. Radios crackling. Someone called for the company man. Ellie was on the other side of the rig, working her shift. He kept checking his watch, counting the minutes until he could see her again. By 9:30, the whole place felt wrong. But the air itself was holding its breath. Mike was walking toward the moon pool when he heard it. This low, ugly sound coming up from deep below, like the earth was clearing its throat. Someone yelled something about gas, and then the rig just shook. It wasn't one explosion.
It was a chain of them. The first one knocked Mike off his feet. The second one lit up the sky so bright he had to shield his eyes. Then the alarms. Every alarm on the rig screaming at once. People were running. Not in a panic yet.
More like they couldn't believe this was actually happening. The kind of running people do when they're still hoping it's a drill. Mike's only thought was Ellie. He started moving toward where he thought her station was, pushing through the smoke. The deck was tilting already. Not a lot. Just enough to make your stomach drop. He kept shouting her name. The fire was everywhere now, but it wasn't the flames that scared him. It was the sound. Metal screaming as it twisted. The way the whole structure felt like it was coming apart underneath them. He found one of her co-workers near the lifeboats. "Have you seen Ellie?" The guy looked at him like he didn't even recognize who Mike was. "I don't know, man. I don't know. Get to the boats." Mike didn't go to the boats. He turned around and went back into the smoke. He was still looking for her when the third explosion hit. It threw him against a wall so hard he saw white. When he could see again, the deck was listing bad. People were jumping into the water. Some with life vests. Some without. And Ellie was nowhere. Mike made it into the water. He doesn't remember exactly how. For hours, he floated in the dark gulf, the fire still burning behind him. Sometimes he thought he heard Ellie calling over the waves. Most of the time, he knew it was just the wind and the flames. When the rescue ship pulled him aboard, he asked the same question to every person who touched him.
We're looking. We're doing everything we can.
"Have you seen a woman named Ellie? About this tall, dark hair. Works in the galley and on the deck." Nobody had seen her. It took 3 days before they told him they found her body. He didn't cry. He sat on the deck, wrapped in a gray blanket, and watched the rig burn on the horizon. It took 36 hours for the fire to finally die. In the weeks and months that followed, he couldn't leave the coast. He watched the response from the shore. Ships lined up for miles, planes flying low every day, spraying chemicals into the water. He heard about the giant steel dome they tried to lower over the well, the one that filled with gas hydrates and clogged before it could do anything. About the top kill operation that pumped thousands of barrels of mud and debris down the hole and accomplished nothing. About the relief wells they started drilling from scratch, a race that would take 5 months while the oil kept pouring out. Then the oil started reaching Louisiana. It came to the marshes and beaches near the little house they had talked about buying. Thick brown slicks in the water, tar balls on the sand. Mike saw birds covered in oil, too heavy to fly, dying on the shore. He saw dead sea turtles. Fishermen he knew from the docks sat in their trucks with nowhere to go because the eastern half of the Gulf was closed to fishing. And the whole time, BP kept saying it wasn't as bad as it looked, that most of the oil was gone, that the dispersant they were dumping by the millions of liters was perfectly safe. Mike had spent enough years on rigs to recognize when someone was protecting the number on a spreadsheet instead of telling the truth. Later, when the official investigations were released, he read every page.
He read about the rushed cement job with too few centralizers, the negative pressure test that was misunderstood because stopping cost more than being sure, the 40 minutes of gas rising unnoticed, the BOP that couldn't cut the buckled pipe. But the reports also made something else clear, even when they didn't say it directly. The same decisions that led to the explosion, the same pressure to move fast and spend less, were still shaping how the company responded to the disaster it had created. None of it surprised him. He'd seen the pattern for years. He just never imagined it would take everything from him. Look, I don't know who's listening to this right now. Maybe you're driving somewhere. Maybe you're lying in bed with your phone. Maybe you just put this on while you were doing something else. But if you stayed with me all the way here, I guess that means something. There are a lot more stories like this one. Stories that don't usually get told all the way through. Most of the time they get buried under reports and settlements and people moving on with their lives. If that kind of thing matters to you too, then maybe you'll want to hear some of the others. Sometimes, late at night, Mike still hears her voice. Not the way she sounded on the rig. The way she sounded back in that kitchen, 2 nights before they left. Promise me this is the last one. He still doesn't know if she made it to a lifeboat. He doesn't know if she was scared at the end. He hopes she wasn't. He hopes she thought he was coming for her. He doesn't work on the water anymore. He can't. Some nights he sits on the porch of that little house they never got to buy, and he talks to her like she's still there. You know what the worst part is? He says out loud sometimes. We were coming home.
We were coming home. We never made it. But maybe the story will stay alive if you share it. Subscribe.